So let's get right into it. Today we will try and cover as much as possible of a very tiny little part of Excel. This is when you have opened an Excel file under data, the what if analysis. So if you see here, the what if analysis is what we're going to try and address. Scenario manager, goal seek, data table, not necessarily in that order. I will start as much as possible. I know I will cover goal seek and scenario manager because both are slightly complex. And if time permits, then I will move to data table as well. For now, let me start with something very simple. Let's take a typical scenario for a what if analysis. Before I begin, is everyone familiar with what a what if analysis is? So what if analysis allows us to look at scenarios. The term what if is the same as a scenario, though we should not get confused by the fact that there is something called a scenario manager. Consider that any what if is a scenario analysis. If this, then what? If that, then what? So that's why it's called a what if analysis or a scenario analysis. I'm going to take some similar, very typical examples. I'm going to take an example of, so let me show you my example right here. So I have an annual interest rate. I have named this. If you want to know how, let me very quickly show you that part as well. Let me clear out. So if you see here, I have annual interest rate, which I have named. Are you familiar with naming of cells? It's important here, though not essential, but it helps. If I were to just take this entire set and create a fresh, okay. So let me just make these percentages. So if I have an annual interest rate, I calculate a monthly interest rate for it. I have the monthly interest rate is calculated thus divided by number of months per annum. That's the monthly interest rate. Then there is the number of years for which I want to take the loan, the months per annum, which is always going to be 12, of course, the months of loan, which is 15 into 12. And I have a loan amount, which I have put together here. This is how much I would like to borrow. Now, if I wish to calculate my equal monthly installments or the EMI, I am effectively going to use one of two ways to calculate it. At this point, I'm using the PMT formula. The PMT formula, I take the monthly interest rate. I take the months of the loan, and I take the loan amount. So with this, it shows me, of course, I'm not interested in the currency, so I switch this to a number. Okay, so I have minus, because this is money that I will have to pay out. It is minus, but of course, it is actually 58,409. So let's very quickly just change that there. So 58,409 is a calculation. Now, if I wish to have B16 to be named, I can do so. It's quite simple. I can go inside formulas and I can define the name for it. When I put in a name here, for example, annual dash interest dash rate, it says that there's a problem with it. I should either have an underscore or have just a letter. So let me, for simplicity sake, okay, I have annual interest rate here. This is one way of doing it. Another is to simply go inside here and type out monthly interest rate. I have a nice way, years of loan. This is the third way. I select these two and under formulas, create from selection. It automatically detects that something is shown to the left. So it says yes, I say okay. And when I click on 15, it shows me years underscore of underscore loan. That's exactly the text that I have here with underscores instead of spaces. These are three ways in which you can name cells, which will mean that my EMI, if I follow the same approach, which I have done here, is monthly interest rate, months of loan, and loan amount. This is just to make it more readable. Now, having looked at this, I know that I have a paying capacity of not 58,409, but less. So I go into data and I say, do a what if analysis. I want to know how much of a loan I need to take if my EMI paying capacity is 55,000 and nothing more than that. So I go into data, what if analysis. I repeat, data, what if analysis, and goal seek. Under goal seek, I wish to sell the calculated value, which is my EMI, to 55,000. I had said I cannot afford to pay more than 55,000. And I want to know what is going to be the loan amount to arrive at 55,000. All right. So let me repeat that for everybody. My problem is, let me put in or let me add here. I have a paying capacity of 55,000 only. I wish to know how much I should take on loan. So I can just select this if I want. I don't need to do anything else. Clicking on EMI, I go ahead into my goal seek data, what if analysis, goal seek. Under this, I am going to set P8, which is already selected, to the amount that I can afford, 55, 1, 2, 3. And I want to know what should be the loan amount. All good so far? Okay. So before I proceed, I can see a very quick set of, let me quickly go through chat and see whether there are some things that I can address. Somebody would like to know how I entered B22. Okay, current selected cell. Okay, let me show you that. So I will get that straight away. What is set cell? Set cell is the value that is calculated. Currently, the value that is calculated is this. So if you see, I have a bunch of numbers and I'm calculating on the basis of 1, 2, and 3. These are the three elements that I'm using in my PMT calculation. My PMT function is using the monthly interest rate, the months of loan, and the loan amount. This is the number that I have to change based on what I can afford. And so I want to understand what is the impact for the loan amount. How much can I take? Having clicked on this or clicked anywhere else, I can go into data, what if analysis, goal seek. Now I set cell. By default, it picks up the cell that I have clicked on. However, I needed to pick B8. So I click on it, it shows me B8. I want to set it to 55, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 55,000 by changing the cell loan amount. I say, okay, it does a certain amount of calculation and it tells me, I need to have a loan amount of minus 47 lakhs, 8,139. Do I go ahead and I say, okay? No, I say cancel because I need to make a correction. When I go back to what if analysis goal seek, I need to remember to set this to minus 55,123 because it's an EMI that is getting calculated. It's a negative number. So I have to remember to set the value to minus. And then I say select, I say okay. Now it shows me if I have a paying capacity of 55,000, all other things being constant, this is essential, all other things being constant, the loan amount that I can take is 47 lakhs 8,139. So it still works whether I use a positive or negative number. But this is the issue. If I use a positive number, my loan amount will be negative. Because I want the loan amount to be positive, I will enter minus 55,000. This is what it shows me. Now, if I click on OK, it is going to replace the number here for the loan amount. Obviously, I can always go back and change this to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it will still calculate as usual because the formula does not change. Goal seek changes the value that I'm seeking to change, but not the formula. Now I have a question. Can we consider months or interest rate as well instead of loan amount? Um, Now, theoretically, yes, it ought to be possible. But there is a problem here. Let me show you what happens if we change. Theoretically, I can change anything. I can select anything else. But remember that this is a payment. To ensure that this works, let me click on it. I go into the what if analysis and I click on goal seek. Again, I'm setting this at 55,000 to 3 by changing cell months of loan. Ideally, the months of loan should increase a little bit because I'm looking for a lower EMI. So it should go a little over 180, maybe 190, maybe 200 remains to be seen. That many months. Let's see what happens. Are we all set? Okay. First, it tells me the cell must contain a value. So my first step is to go back and say, oh, I cannot have it as a formula. It needs a value. So I will enter a value. I was lazy, so I did not do a copy paste because it's a number that is obvious. There's no decimal. So I just overwrote it and made it 180. Let me come back. What if analysis, goal seek, set this to 55,000 by changing cell months of loan. So my expected value is a little over 180. As you can see, it's going nuts. It's going nuts, and it gives me somehow my target value was 55. Did I make a mistake there? I think I did. I should have set it to minus 55. Let me go back. Minus 55, 1, 2, 3, and select 180. Okay. So at this point, it allows me to say that if I have 55,000 as my paying capacity, I need to increase the months of loan from 180 to 215. All right. So let me come back here and let's try with the interest rate. Let's see what happens. I'm going to change this from a value. I'm so sorry. Since if you have a question, if you have something to say, please enter it in the chat. I'm not really able to ask you a question because we are in a webinar and you'll all be muted. So please do not raise your hand. Just type out a question in chat. Q&A, I can try and see, but I'm not always sure. Yes, I can see something. But feel free to type out in chat. So what is a set cell functionality? Let me come back to that. I'm going to first change this to a value. Right. So this is now a value. What am I trying to simulate for? I'm trying to simulate for something which is my EMI. So in my goal seek, my set cell is the value which holds the formula for which I have a constraint. My constraint is 55,000. So instead of 58,419, it is 55. So I'm again setting this to minus 55, 1, 2, 3. So my set cell is the cell which has the formula. I'm simulating a what if for the set cell which has a formula, EMI. So I have a value of minus 55,000. And this time I want to change the cell monthly interest rate. So if I want to pay a smaller EMI, I want to check without changing the months of loan, what is going to be my interest rate. So this shows me an interest rate, which is different from the previous one because I have taken a different EMI. So the question is, what exactly is happening here? How is this functioning? First of all, why do we have, I have a bunch of questions which I will respond to. And all of those are very relevant questions. First of all, why do we have a minus? When we calculate a payment, uh, the PMT as such here, the EMI that I'm calculating is a payment. It is an outflow. And the way it is calculated is to create a negative number. So it automatically creates a negative number. The same thing if it is calculated using a more traditional approach, which I have here, I had to add the -1. This is my EMI calculation without using the PMT function. So if I were to work on this formula, which is still using the same set, it is using loan amount into monthly interest rate into 1 plus monthly interest rate to the power of months of loan. So all of this is the same calculation, EMI and with the PMT function and without the PMT function in the traditional manner. I can apply my what if analysis to this calculation C8 as well. Let's see what happens. I'm going to set the value to 55,000 here. I do not need a negative. I can use 55,000 and I say by selecting 180. So like before, it shows me 215. Similarly, if I go back and I make this again 55,000 by changing the interest rate, obviously it will mean I'm going to get a lower interest rate, which is calculated at 0.87. So the question of why negative, it's a question of the kind of calculation that you do. Either you do an old-fashioned calculation, which gives you 58,409, or you use a PMT function, which automatically looks at it as it has semantic knowledge. So it knows that it has to pay out the money, and therefore it's a minus 58,409. And so if I have to do anything on this, I have to remember to use minus as the minus sign. Now, I have some other questions. Let me first take the earlier question. Why exactly do we have the set cell? The set cell is based on the calculation that we want to simulate. You see, this is a different calculation. This is a different calculation. If I want to simulate this calculation, that is what is going to be my set cell, B8. And then I will have minus. If I want to simulate this calculation and I use plus 55, the positive number. In all of these scenarios, the approach is exactly the same. Minus or plus is something that we keep in mind because of what we already have. But the set value is the cell in which we have this formula. The same formula is recalculated. Remember that goal seek has one primary limitation. Goal seek only simulates a what if on one single variable. Okay, one single variable. I have to choose which one I would like to simulate for. Loan amount, months of loan, monthly interest rate. All right, so this is one basic example of goal seek. I'm going to give you a second example, which is actually even simpler. Here we had a more complex formula. Here I'm going to take bonus per employee, which is being distributed. There's a bonus pot which is being distributed across a certain set of employees equally. So the bonus per employee is 8,750. This is the pot available to me. This means 8,750 for everyone. Now, if I wish to give a larger amount, I need a larger pot. So let me see what happens. Goal seek, set cell is B16, which is right. I want to set this value to 9,000. I want to give out 9,000 to every employee. Therefore, I want to know how much of a bonus pot should I have. Let me write that down. I wish to increase the bonus per employee to 9,000. What should be the amount of my pot? What if analysis, goal seek, B16, set it to 9,000. So this calculation and the value desired 9,000 by changing cell bonus pot. This tells me that I need 40 lakh 50,000 to be able to give a bonus per employee of 9,000. Suppose I were this relatively cruel employer who decides that, you know what, I'm going to give 12,000, but equally divided to a certain number. And this time I'm going to change the number of employees. So one set of my employees will get 12,000 and the rest will get nothing. Mugambo Khushwa. And so I have now a number which gets calculated. Only 328 people would get a share of the bonus pot if I were to hold out 12,000 per employee. As you can see, it is only one at a time, and that's how this functions. The pot in this case is a total amount. I have so much money available with me, and from this, I want to give people. So let me change this. I will call this cash available for bonus. Okay, so this is where I have now a certain amount of money which I'm distributing. Now, what exactly am I doing all of this for? Why am I simulating numbers? Let us assume that I have here for some other purpose, I have a bonus per employee which I need to bring down. The reason is I have just been told that we need cash for some emergency expense. I'm going to change and I'm going to change my goal seek. I'm going to bring this number down. I'm going to say, if I were to give only 7,000 by changing this, what happens? Instead of 39, 37, 31.5 is what I will consume. The rest can still be available. So there are different ways of approaching the skinning that cat. You can do a calculation and then see. So if I want to say emergency fund and I need 6 lakhs. Okay, so I am going to now my bonus pot has reduced. This minus this, and my bonus per employee changes to that divided by that. So there are different ways of working this. At each time, if I switch around my bonus pot and emergency fund, if I make my bonus pot as constant and make my emergency fund the difference between these two. Now, let's say my bonus per employee, I go back to data, what if analysis, goal seek. Yes, that's the right one. And I set it to 7,000. By changing cell, bonus pot. This will mean that I will have an emergency fund of 7,87,500. So depending on what it is that we are trying to work upon, we create a different set of what ifs. So I have done one what if earlier just to see the bonus per employee because that was my target. The other where I was trying to see cash available for bonus. Here, I'm trying to see the emergency fund. All right. So where is this typically used? Anywhere where you need to do a simulation. If you had a simulation to be done from a cost perspective, then you would do it maybe a price of an object, or you play around with margin. It could be anything involving numbers where you have a calculation. If I have some number, even without any description, if I put a number down and I put another number down and I have A minus B, and I want to do a what if where I take a goal seek for G7 and I set it to 9. How many numbers should I put? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. By changing cell this. This shows me what the number should become. So really, it doesn't matter what you read here. This business intelligence that you see, these numbers, the semantic value of these numbers, this is an annual interest rate, this is a months of loan, is not relevant. What is relevant is what you're trying to simulate, which number, which formula you're trying to simulate by changing one other value which is used inside the calculation. That is the basics of goal seek. I repeat, if you're trying to simulate a calculation by changing a component of that calculation, this is where goal seek is used. All right. So moving on from this, we will look at the scenario manager. The scenario manager is a different way of looking at data. This, you remember in goal seek, we spoke of its limitation. You have one single variable. What if I have more than one variable that needs to be changed? And my scenario is not one, but I have 2, 3 scenarios. I already have a scenario set up here. So I'm going to actually recreate this elsewhere. Okay, I have data. Let me format this as a table because I like to do that. I'm also a little anal about grid lines. I don't like them. So, right. Now, let's say I have all of these costs. I also have a certain revenue. To make life easier, I will set that revenue for myself here, copy from there, done. So this is my revenue. What is my margin? My margin is the difference between this and all of the costs. Okay, this is my margin. That looks like a rather large margin. What happens if I remove this? Okay, that makes more sense. Right, so this is my margin. This is my revenue. Now, I'm not very happy with cost 4, cost type 4 and cost type 9. Let's first go into data and create a scenario. Let me add a scenario. In this scenario, I will call this the actual. My changing cells are going to be cost type 4, comma, let's say cost type 6, comma, and cost type 9. These are the 3 values that I would like to see different values for. What happens if these numbers change? What is the impact on my margin? I'm creating a dummy scenario called actual, which is going to be exactly the same. I'm going to make no changes. It offers me up a way of changing these values. I am not going to change the values. I'm just going to say OK. So I've created one single one. I'm going to create a second one. I'm going to call this variant 1. I have these changing cells. I say OK. However, this time round, I'm going to change these numbers. Instead of 1,85,291, I will make this 1,30,000. Instead of 34,440, I will make this 25,000. Here, I will just knock this down to 150, 209. Okay. Now I'm going to add one more variant just so you can see what is happening. I have a variant 2. Okay. And in this variant 2, I will change this value. Let's say this will go down very slightly. This will go down significantly. And this fellow will unfortunately increase. Are we clear? Close. Let me now show you again what I have done. I have data of some kind or the other. I have a calculation that is arrived at. Now, based on this calculation and this, I have created a scenario where I have a first scenario which has the data as is. I have a second scenario where if you see the second scenario has a different kind of data. This is what is my data for the second scenario. Sometimes you will see show works, show doesn't work. It can be a little iffy. This seems to be low on the priority for Microsoft, so I haven't seen this being fixed in quite some time. But it's all right. I can always look at edit, see the values here. Now, with these three things, three different scenarios, I want to understand in each scenario, what is the margin? You see here, if I have actual, click on show, my margin is changing here and I can see 311450. With variant 1, I see that the margin is 441141. With variant 2, it is 331659. I don't need to do anything else. Imagine I wish to see all together. Okay, so let me quickly check if there are any questions. Right. So I have here now a set of scenarios that I have created. For these scenarios, I'm going to do a summary. When I click on summary, it asks me which is the result cell. Result cell is C13. So it will calculate based on whatever formula is available in C13. And when I say OK, this is what it gives me. Under actual, so there is a set of values, variant 1, variant 2. The current set is variant 2 because that is what I clicked on last for show. So I have actual, variant 1, variant 2, and it shows me the difference for each one. This, as I know, is the margin. So I have margin, which is highlighted for each scenario. Which of these two options do you think you're likely to use more? Right. So the scenario summary, let me delete this. This scenario summary, I go back to my scenario manager, and with any one thing selected, I go ahead and say summary. That is it. If I say summary, it asks me which is my result cell. Because it was already selected, it will show me C13. What happens if I were to have clicked elsewhere? Uh, Let me give you another. Cost is equal to sum of. Okay. So let's say that I have selected something here. I come to what if analysis, scenario manager, and I say summary. I don't pay attention to the result cell. The result cell is at cost. And I say, okay. What this does is it still gives me the summary, but the summary is now for the cost. So the cost as it changes based on each scenario. Now, what if by mistake, when I go to my scenario manager, I do a summary and I delete. So I have no result cell. If I click on OK, it will still give me a summary with only the values and no formula calculation being done. So always check that you have something selected, the formula selected. So if I have a summary, remember that the summary is actually flat. Since this is completely flat, before I share it with anyone, it makes more sense that I first find out what is C5, which was the other one that I had selected. I think cost type C5, C7, C10. C5, C7, and C10. Here and paste. Okay. So if I have something, I can use this, change the names, yes, and show what is actual, what is variant 1, what is variant 2. To avoid confusion, typically what I tend to do is delete this. So it shows actual variant 1, variant 2. And of course, if I have the margin, then it will show me the margin values here as well. And this is now ready to share. So there are different scenarios in which we use the scenario manager and where we use goal seek. Goal seek is really meant to be used when we are focusing on one single value changing. If you're looking at more than one value changing, you're going to use the scenario manager. So with the scenario manager, you're talking of multiple items. But for each one, you need to define. So in the example that we saw here, for each and every time, I can create any number of variants. If you are if you're an FP&A professional, if you're doing budgeting, if you're doing planning or anything of that sort, you will be calling these as actual and either budget or plan, whatever you find comfortable. But remember, in each case, you have to define these values. If each of these values is something, I can add any number and still have a summary long as I select the right. Now, result cells. What happens if I say C13, comma C14? This is now going to give me both values calculated and presented here. So I can make this cost and margin. Yes. Now, there is a good question. We saw here when we created this scenario summary, from the scenario manager, I select summary. I'm looking at C13, C14, but instead of selecting scenario summary, I'm going to select the scenario pivot table report. Now this will give me something named scenario pivot table and show me 1, 2, 3. What are the actuals and what are these totals? It will not show me the individual values. It will not show me what are the individual values for variant 1, variant 2, variant 3, and actual, only the resulting values. In summary, you can also see the values for each variable that has changed. But the pivot table shows it like this. And unfortunately, the labeling is terrible. Now let me see what happens. I'm going to show you something slightly different. I'm going to say that this is, I'm selecting the two. I'm going to formula and I'm going to say create from selection. It will automatically detect something to the left. I say, okay. What does this mean? This is called cost. This is called margin. Do I have an option when under data to go to what if analysis, scenario manager, summary, result cell, cost, comma, margin. At this point, instead of having some random cell reference, I have the name of the cell which appears, and this makes a lot more sense to me. I still have C5, C7, C10 to deal with. The way to address that is also now formulas, create from selection, left column. Now this is cost type 1, type 2, etc. Under data, I go into what if analysis, into the scenario manager. If you see, I do not need to make any change. If you see everywhere, the cells have already been renamed. So now if I do a summary, cost, margin, this will show me cost type 4, cost type 6, but cost type 10, C10 is missed out for some reason. Oh, there's only cost type 9. So some error there in my selections. that has not updated itself. But it's a small enough thing. If that is updated, it will show you everything. In the same manner, if I wish to see now a cleaner summary, let me just select these. For some reason, it shows me cost type 9 here. Let's do a scenario summary and cost margin. Without any additional effort, I can now view my data as a ready-made summary. All right. So let's review really what we've done here. We started by looking at a goal seek. In the goal seek, we looked at an annual interest rate, a monthly interest rate changing, a months of loan changing or loan amount changing. All three are elements of the formula in set cell. This is going to be my set cell or this is going to be my set cell. In either scenario, I have these three values. It is important that these be values for my goal seek to function. Remember, goal seek will require one single variable to change, and the other is all the inputs for the formula in the set cell should be values, not formulae. These are really the two things that you need to think of uppermost. So we looked at goal seek in Excel and we looked at scenario manager in Excel. Scenario manager allows us to create a view without going to the summary. Right here in place, if I were to highlight just for my own sake, which was it? This and this. When I go into my scenario manager, without doing the summary, I can choose to walk through each of my scenarios. This is actual. This is variant 2, and what happened just now? Why is it not? Oh, sorry. So I am at actual variant 1. I can choose to show variant 1. So it shows me the variant 1 values and the cost and margin as well. If I say variant 2 show, then it shows me these values changing right here, show right here. I can remove this, close it, and it will stay at whichever is the selected one, or go back to actual and click on that. Besides this, I can go in for a summary. I'm not actually looking at the delete or merge at the moment because we don't have enough time for it, but you can play around with it and you will discover the options available to you. But keep in mind, if you're looking at more than one input value change for your formula, then you use scenario manager. Otherwise, you use goal seek. I hope this was useful for all of you. I hope this is something that you can practice. More than anything else, what you have seen here. Oh, I have a question here. Can I click on 58409 for the formula? Of course. More than anything else, it's about what you use this for. You can decide what values you are trying. I have two calculations here for EMI. One is using the PMT function, which is very simple and straightforward. This is just taking the monthly interest rate, the number of months of loan, and the loan amount. And this is doing a more complex, more traditional mathematical calculation. It still uses loan amount, monthly interest rate, and months of loan, but this is a bit more complicated as compared to PMT. So you can choose which one you wish to use. And well, it's up to you. The more you do, the more you play around with it, the more you learn. Thank you, everyone, for this time that you have given us. A 1 full hour of your life. Thank you once again. So GoalSeek, for the question just asked by Shubhankar, GoalSeek works for absolutely any component of the formula, but only one at a time, not more than one. Summary and scenario. Summary is a subset of the scenario manager. It is an option within the scenario manager of creating a summary. Even without creating the summary, I could go in, look at each individual change just by clicking on what if analysis, scenario manager, and saying, show me variant one, and it will show me the variant one calculations. Only if I need a summary will it take me to the summary. Thank you all once again, and see you all next time.